And we're pleased to welcome from London, Tim Bale, Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University, London. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Happy to be here.
First off, the UK Prime Minister, did he was he A, lying, B, not curious enough, as those critics suggest, or C, just simply hadn't followed the story enough?
Well, it's pretty clear that he misled Parliament, but I think he would argue, and I think actually many people in Parliament would probably now acknowledge that he did that accidentally, in the sense that he wasn't actually fully apprised of the facts, which then brings us to your second and third questions, which are around whether, as the chief executive, if you like, of the UK, he should have asked more questions of those people advising him. His argument now is that, in fact, those questions were to some extent asked, albeit implicitly, perhaps, rather than explicitly, but he was not told the truth. And the truth was that the ambassadorial pick, Peter Mandelson, had not passed his developed vetting. The civil servant in question, it is argued anyway, felt that he was under no obligation, indeed that he might have been under a legal obligation not to reveal that to Keir Starmer. And I think that'll be the big question tomorrow, what Ollie Robbins, who is this civil servant, is going to say to a parliamentary committee, and whether that actually contradicts what the Prime Minister has said today.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that just to make it clear for our viewers here, that Starmer had an opportunity for a catch-up session. He appointed the wrong man, it seems, back in December of 2024. But when he was sacked, he could have laid it all out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Starmer's critics are saying. Starmer himself said that inquiries were made at that point, and he was given no reason to believe that the candidate, Peter Mandelson, who was by then the ambassador, hadn't passed the developed vetting. His argument is that he should have been told at that time, but he wasn't told at that time. I guess his critics could argue that he should have pushed harder for an answer and for more detail on what exactly had happened. Ollie Robbins, the civil servant, is arguing that actually he felt that it was not his responsibility to tell Keir Starmer that his decision, despite the fact that Mandelson had failed the developed vetting, that Mandelson was still actually a suitable candidate.
And this is a post ambassador to the United States that generally goes to a career diplomat.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the arguments actually against Keir Starmer is that he had a perfectly good ambassador in place, and that actually he, instead of leaving her in place, decided to take a gamble, believing that because Mandelson was so well connected in many ways in the United States, he would be a better person to somehow get on with the Trump administration. And of course, in some ways, that's the vital context and the background to all this. It's the concern among the UK government that with Trump in the White House, the special relationship was somehow imperiled. So they had to do absolutely everything they could, including obviously inviting Trump to the UK for a state visit, taking the King to the USA, which is going to happen quite soon, and appointing a new person to be the ambassador. That person was Peter Mandelson. So it's really, I guess, in some ways, a testament to the anxiety that the UK feels about that relationship with the USA and how important it is.
So that anxiety justified for many, Tim Bale. Why didn't the Prime Minister, again, when he sacked Mandelson, insist upon that point, again, rather than what's developed now into passing the buck, some would suggest, to the civil service?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a degree of buck passing. Ultimately, the decision does come down to the Prime Minister. He's the guy who appoints the ambassador, and it was pretty clear that he wanted Peter Mandelson in the job. Some people are arguing that that was the reason why he wasn't told about the developed vetting denial. In other words, the civil service were so convinced that come what may, Keir Starmer wanted to appoint Peter Mandelson, that in fact, even though there was a problem with the vetting, they believe that they had to some extent, pass it because that's what the Prime Minister wanted. But you are right, and critics are right. There is an argument to be made that the Prime Minister is in charge. He should have gone into more detail, or at least got his very closest advisors to gone into more detail once Mandelson had been fired. Clearly, he didn't. And
I was going to say, and again, the reason why he failed that security clearance was not the Epstein files, but Peter Mandelson's longtime association with Chinese firms, which were deemed a security risk. Now, the whole of the House of Commons knew this. This wasn't a secret. So one might ask, is that responsibility shared beyond just the Prime Minister in naming him in the first place?
That is also a good point. I mean, Peter Mandelson was, to some extent, a known quantity and a known, if you like, risky bet. We don't actually know, however, why he failed the developed vetting. One of the principles of developed vetting is that the points that come out of that may cause somebody's developed vetting to be denied are never actually shared, even with the Prime Minister or the appointing minister. That's one of the principles. So we still have no absolute concrete knowledge of why he failed that developed vetting. It could be anything. It could be his business interests. It could be some kind of indiscretion in his youth, sexual or otherwise. We've no idea, to be honest, why that happened. People are talking about business interests. I mean, of course, Peter Mandelson in his post-political career was a very successful lobbyist, but we don't know that that is the reason.
One final question, Tim Bale, because we're going to, again, hear from that high civil servant, Ollie Robbins, on Tuesday. Does Keir Starmer survive the week, the month? Will he still be around after local elections are held in May?
Well, prediction is a mug's game, but it's difficult to believe that Labour MPs will want to get rid of him before those May elections because Labour is facing a bloodbath in May. I would have thought they would want Keir Starmer to take the fall for that, but I would have thought after May, those Labour MPs who are hoping perhaps to challenge him will probably at that point, I think, make the decision that it's time for them to act. But let's see.
Tim Bale, so many thanks for joining us from London.